And what people don't understand about SNL, unlike any other aspect of this business, there's no ADs, there's no like, it's because it's live television, there's stage management, but no one's like, you don't have like a call sheet. You don't know when you have to be in the works. You kind of just figure it out with your own little pit team. There's no sense of space or time because you're wildly like rewriting and doing things. And you're always hungry. There's no food. There's no craft services there. I will never understand why.
Well, because you're throwing a party after the show. So they're like, we'll save that money there.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and you still pay for you know, that's the dirty secret, right? You pay for that party as a cast member.
Oh my God. Hey everyone, I am Damian Holbrook from TV Guide Magazine and TV Insider. Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. And if you're interested in programming like this from the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Or as the kids say, I think, smash that like button. So now it is my pleasure to introduce actor Anna Gasteyer for this.
Hi.
I'm so excited to talk about this career retrospective. How do you feel about doing a career retrospective at this stage?
A career retrospective? I feel like I've finally arrived.
Right.
I mean, it's always funny. It's like a stop and assess, I guess.
Right.
Let's take stock. Let's see what's working, what's not.
Well, you've been, going through this and prepping for that. You have worked almost consistently for almost 2 decades now.
Kind of mind-blowing when I think about that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm lucky, I would say, because I've had opportunity in a bunch of different tracks. Right. So that's the only reason I've continued working. Because as you know, I mean, actors have appropriate slumps, for lack of a better word. And so since my career started as a singer, like that's how I got into college, was as a vocalist. When I returned to Broadway after SNL, I ended up having like sort of a whole other weird road, less traveled situation happen with that, and then return to TV,
You studied music at Northwestern, right? For
1 year. So I sang my way into college. I spent 1 year in music school. I was a terrible music student. It was very formal. It was an opera program. They didn't have a music theater program back then. And I probably wouldn't have even qualified because I wasn't much of a dancer and I didn't come from that background exactly. I loved music theater and I did it in high school, but I didn't think that would be like my career exactly. And then once I went to Northwestern, which is in Chicago, which is the birthplace of, improvisational comedy. And I literally just found the improv group. Like I transferred out of the School of Music into the School of Speech and Drama, which they now call the Speech of Communications, found the improv kids. And I was like, hey, this is the thing. So, and it was great because it opened up such a massive world for me that ultimately ended up characterizing so much of my career because it's where I wrote my first sketches and where I wrote my first characters and all of that, and I kind of never questioned as a result of that I could probably figure out if I had to, a way to make things if no one was going to hire me,
Did you do Second City though?
I didn't do Second City because at the time they had 3 women and 5 men. Now, so this is the retrospective part, is when you start to really look back, people, I know, especially young people, they don't remember, like they don't know, or they weren't there, or they weren't born. But what's sort of incredible is the ways that opportunities have changed for people. I mean, our mutual friend Tina Fey and I always have this joke that's we were ethnic in the 90s, like because we were Greek and had like, curly hair. I mean, literally I had casting people say to me upon arrival in LA, completely seriously, you're talented, but you're not going to work because you don't look like Courtney Thorne-Smith, and I just rewatched the Pamela Anderson documentary. She was like the thing. That was the look everyone was aspiring to. You had to be a very tiny, white, straight-haired blonde. Like that was it. And otherwise, I don't know what you're going to be on TV. So it just wasn't like sort of even in the plan, really. I didn't think I would be on television, if that makes any sense. And then
honestly, thinking then, like even in comedies at that point, they were casting the Courtney Thorne Smiths. They were casting the,
Yeah.
they were all the pretty little blonde, wives to the schlubby husbands.
Yeah. And you could aspire to auditioning for wives eventually, which is mostly what I did after SNL. And there were exceptions to the rule, but time is a funny thing. Like you look back and you're like, oh, they did SNL and then they did American Auto. And this kind of interesting evolution of the way we've diversified exists in that land in between. So I'm getting a little political about it, and I don't mean to. It's just the reality of how things were at that time. So, and so the Groundlings so I went, a bossy friend told me to move to LA, and I said, okay. And because I didn't really know what else to do. And I went to see.
But born in DC, educated in Boston, and now or Chicago, and now you're moving to Los Angeles, which is a totally different vibe. Yes,
for sure. But this one friend who actually hilariously, I mean, we didn't understand what he was so good at. My friend Peter Spears from high school, who's now an Academy Award winning producer, because from college, he was really good at we didn't know it was a producer, but he was really good at bringing people together and thinking of a good idea. And he's had this sort of outsized influence on me, because he basically in a very bossy way told me to move to LA. He was like, I think you're going to work in film and television. I'd done 2 student films at Northwestern. They were fun. But I didn't really, I knew that I liked to write comedy, and I moved out there. That was it. That was the plan, literally. And I knocked around, and then I ended up going to a Groundlings show, again, thinking Second City style.
Right.
And at the time, there were, Lisa Kudrow was there, Kathy Griffin was there, Mindy Sterling was there, Karen Ariyama. I'm trying to think, it was such an extraordinary collection of super talents, of really funny women that were making crazy characters. Julia Sweeney was there. I mean, all of these unbelievable performers. And so I started taking classes there, because I thought, Coolidge, of course, was there, Jennifer Coolidge.
Oh my God.
I mean, it was this powerhouse era. And so I started taking classes there immediately, and kind of chipping away at creating things for myself. So the Groundlings, once like Northwestern, led to everything, because that's, again, over a 3 or 4 year period, I would go do a job, or I did the national tour of a show called The Real Life Brady Bunch, which was created by now Joey Soloway. That was this insane. We would do full productions of the Brady Bunch scripts. I naturally played Alice. Forever an Alice, Damian. Forever an Alice.
We all want to be
Marsha,
but most of us are Alice's.
Yeah. We all want to be Jan. Is what we all want.
Oh wow, you're
Jan. And certainly no Marsha. 24-year-old Alice, and I would come back and I would take more Groundlings classes, and so once the Groundlings kind of came together, I mean, I'm just jumping the questions here, but I'm trying to think of what it would have been like for somebody to walk into a Groundlings show and see those people performing, I know. And Catan was there, and Will Ferrell was there, and just the Mike Hitchcock, Sam Bagley, the funniest mofos you ever did meet.
Hilarious.
Yes. So those people, I mean, the Groundlings started everything for me, and that's kind of was the beginning of everything. That's how I got SNL. That's how
So that's because I saw that you while you were in LA, you did episodic stuff as most actors try to, Party of Five, NYPD Blue, things like that. But at what point did you start looking, because it's for SAG members, when did you start looking for representation or an agent? So I started looking for representation immediately, and was told that I didn't look like Courtney Thorne Smith. So that didn't work out very well for me. And it was literally all just Valley Artists Inc. on Lancashire. It was these tiny agencies that represented, where you thought you could get in and do the hustle and whatever. Back in the day, we would send postcards and we would invite them. And Northwestern's a real putting on a show kind of a community. So we were forever writing plays and doing things, trying to get people to come to our showcase at 11:30 at night. And I just said yes to everything. I just did everything you could do and make with anyone who asked, and collaborated wherever I possibly could. And then
I was writing with a really close friend from Northwestern, the first person I ever wrote sketches with, who's a television writer now named Jill Cargerman, really old, my oldest and best friend. And we got hired somehow to write for some terrible prank setup show. Like it was like non-union, just like the worst. And we wrote like pranks that I hate prank comedy. Like I really hate it. I hate cringy, pranky things. It makes me very uncomfortable. But anyway, that's what we did. And we were like a young female team. So we were being submitted for like Mad TV and SNL and things like that. And a friend from college was like a junior assistant to a junior assistant to a junior assistant, but recognized that we were funny and writing and hustling. And so we ended up meeting with a FACO assistant, hip pocket situation at William Morris, which is was this amazing agency. And at William Morris, I then went back to LA and was in the Groundlings at this point. And I knew that I really just mostly wanted to be a performer and that Jill mostly wanted to be a writer. And we sort of had that conversation. And William Morris sent someone to come see me at the Groundlings. And what was fascinating was that all these like rinky-dink agencies had all these rules that were really mean. They, again, told me so many things were wrong with my look and then my this and whatever. And that's their prerogative. Of course, they were just reading the room. And oh my God, and I would go do scenes. I don't know, back in the day, you used to have to do scene work in agents, and then they would call you and like tell you that they weren't going to sign you. It was awful. And then Jennifer Craig, this like superpower agent. I mean, she was an up and comer at the time, but she was with William Morris. She came hustling backstage at the Groundlings and she was like, "Did you write that material?" And I said, "Yeah, I wrote it." She was like, "You said you read it?" I was like, "Well, I collaborate with people." And she was like, "And okay, and you have an acting degree and she just signed me on the spot and is still my agent to this day.
Oh my God.
We're not at Gersh. We're at Gersh now. But yeah. So, I mean, the loyalty was incredible, but also the passion. She wasn't like daunted by the things that made me different. She was excited by the challenges of them.
Who told you to move to New York then?
Saturday Night Live, Lorne Michaels.
Right.
So I auditioned. So Will Ferrell. So I stayed in LA. I had an agent in '94. That's when I got signed, I think, and then did those little, under fives. They call them day players now, I think. But anyway, I did a bunch of those under fives. I didn't know what was going to stick, the drama or the comedy. My first job was Seinfeld, which has been well documented. My first real TV job. And again, SAG Foundation wise, it's a good sort of, I don't know if it's interesting, but I always tell young actors, my daughter's a young actor, it's like, you're really only trying to win you're not necessarily going to win the job every time, but you can win the favor of the casting director, because one of my really close friends is a big casting director. And I think it's so tempting to malign casting and to think that they're the ones blocking the door. But the reality is that they're advocating so hard for actors so much of the time. And when you do a good job, even if you don't get the part, you make them look like they made a good choice when they put their list of 20 people together, And so my first experience with that was Mark Hirschfeld, who used to run casting at NBC. And he came to see the Groundlings. I was in the Sunday show, which was like the B team, and asked to have a general with me and brought me in for 2 or 3 things. I didn't get them, but I was prepared and I had fun and whatever. It was fun in a room. And then he cast me on Seinfeld, which was the #1 show on TV at the time. And it was an episode which became iconic, The Soup Nazi. I had one line. I thought I was going to die. I was so nervous. Literally I was like, because you had that thought too, like if you fuck up one line, like you have no business doing this job. They're going to know that you're the charlatan.
Right. On a show that's like at Olympic levels at that point. Yeah.
That definitely your like ex-boyfriend's going to see. You know what I mean? Like there's it's on the list for sure. Like it's not going to be missed. Yeah, exactly right. So anyway, but Mark, I always think about that. And whenever my daughter gets close on something and doesn't get it, I'm like, that person's going to call you back though. Like it's just the nature of the beast. People do and create loyalty for people who are doing a good job. It's happened so many times in my career where I know when they're like, she always delivers, so let's bring her,
Right.
Even though the knocks are hard to take in the moment, Anyway, so Will Ferrell recommended me. The '95 was the huge cast turnover at SNL of that era, where Molly Shannon and Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry and all that sort of Daryl Hammond, that cast came together, and they made a couple of little tweaks. They brought in a new woman and they brought in a new Black guy. And so they had auditions with just women and just Black male comedians. And that was me and Tracy Morgan, ultimately, who were hired. So that was 96. And so I moved to New York.
And so, it feels like everyone I've ever spoken to who was on SNL, like they had that one person who was on the show already and said, like, you've got to come and try this out. You've got, like, they almost like sponsor you in like it's a country club.
That's hilarious. I think that is because you know Tina, and because Tina was a writer, and so she knew that she sponsored in Rachel, definitely. And
I think
often
Adam that brought her in?
Adam probably sponsored Tina. That sounds right. Yeah. McKay sponsored Tina at a country club. I wasn't sponsored. I mean, I guess in theory, Will recommended me, but we didn't know one another. I think they just said like, hey, who's popping at the Groundlings? And he listed a bunch of us, and we sent tapes in, and then they saw my tape, and then they screen tested me. So it was scary. I was by myself. I was in an off, I was like a new sophomore, you know what I mean? Like they'd all come in together. And like, I think it was like halfway through my first show that Mike Shoemaker, who was our great caregiver, who's the EP at Late Night with Seth Meyers, kind of pulled me aside, and he was like, did anybody like tell you how this day goes? Like, did anybody like, because Saturday is its own runaway train at that show. And what people don't understand about SNL, unlike any other aspect of this business, there's no ADs, there's no like, it's because it's live television, there's stage management, but no one's like, you don't have like a call sheet. You don't know when you have to be in the works. You kind of just figure it out with your own little pit team, pit crew of like dressers and makeup artists and hairdressers. Every cast member has their own little pit crew. So in my case, my friend Martell kind of like drove the bus and was like, okay, you need to be in the chair, and would like, come find me. Because you're kind of, there's no sense of space or time because you're wildly like rewriting and doing things, and you're always hungry. There's no food. There's no craft services there. I will never understand why. I mean, always hungry because you've rolled out of bed,
Well, because they're showing you're doing a party after the show. So they're like, we'll save that money there. Right. Yeah.
No, and you still pay for that's the dirty secret, right? You pay for that party as a cast member.
Oh my God.
Did you know that? So yeah, so like, there's always some like business manager or something who's like ordering away, and you're like, I'm paying at my table.
Oh my God. So you mentioned Mike Shoemaker. So I reached out to some of your friends. Because it's a career retrospective. So I thought maybe, and you've collaborated with someone. So Shoemaker, he said, from Anna's first day at SNL, you could see she was incredible. The writers loved having someone who interpreted every line perfectly. And once we realized, and Anna realized, what a great writer she was, it was off to the races. I don't have to remind you of the characters because they are all timed best of stuff that now shows up on TikTok.
On TikTok.
Yeah. But then, and you did, obviously talk about iconic stuff like the delicious dish moment, obviously, Bobby.
Middle school music teachers. Bobby and Marty.
And so Tina suggested that I ask what your creative process was in developing Bobby and Marty with Will Ferrell and Paula Pell. And then followed it up with, and ask if they ever got in trouble with HR while doing it.
Oh my God. Of course she said that. Yes, we did. So we were infamous. I never knew this. Paula just told me it was like the most recurring character in SNL history, which I didn't know. Wow. I think we did the most Bobby and Marty's over a 6-year period. I have no idea. We probably did 3 or 4 a year. I don't know. And the evolution story actually is kind of interesting because it is, it wasn't like a cool sketch at the beginning. Like it was like, it's like a medley bit and kind of character-y, and like the Smart Boys were kind of like, whatever. And then, but we, because there were the people who loved the characters, and then there were the people who loved the medleys, and then sort of the combination there and always entertained me. But Helen Hunt was the host, and I think it was the second or third time we had done it, but it wasn't like beloved, like people, in-house, like people at home liked it, but it was like annoying to the smart writers, I think. And they had a turd of a cold open during dress that tanked. And I don't remember, it was political, something, it just didn't work. It didn't get any laughs or whatever. And they were in sort of crisis. Shoemaker told me this. And Helen Hunt was the host, and they're in the room, you know, between dress and air, and they have to do with, they sit there while these, like, there's hubbubbing and decision-making happening of what's getting cut. And apparently Helen Hunt, it was Christmas time, and it was a Christmas-themed Bobby and Marty. And she was like, what about Bobby and Marty? Like, we could open with that. And everybody was like, that's a really good idea. Like, that will totally work. So as soon as we opened the show, it like cemented the future of the characters. Right. And then, you know what I mean? Because they can kind of go either way, but it depends where you play and all that stuff, because you get more eyeballs.
I know that opening sketch, or even like, you know, if you get in before update. Yeah.
It's for real. That's it's very hard. There's only 2 sketches or something that ultimately air, because you have the monologue, you have the parody, and then you have right, exactly. Yeah, and I have a funny story about that. Remind me about NPR that I want, not funny, but interesting.
Well, in regards to Bobby and Marty, Amy Poehler.
Yeah.
Said,
oh God.
So she referred to, she mentioned how you were a graduating senior to her freshman. So you had that 1-year crossover, but she loved watching you. You reminded her of Jane Curtin in that smart and funny way. She said, here is something that might be fun. Long after Anna and Will left, we used to joke after a particularly bad table read. Looks like we're gonna have to order up a Bobby and Marty, because that was code for the show needs help. How cool is that?
I know Maya used to be like, we're gonna be ordering up some Bobbies and Martys, everybody. That's really funny and delightful. So what the part I didn't tell you that Tina was referring to, we procrastinated at a professional level, unbefore seen or met since. I mean, hours of horseshit between me and Paula Pell and Will Fowler. I mean, hours. We would light our farts. We would tell long stories about our childhood. It didn't matter. Like, it was like a 3-way constant. Someone going like, okay, let's get started. Then someone going, no, let me just say this one thing real quick. And we would laugh so hard at whatever we were doing that wasn't writing the sketch. And it became infamous that we would start at because sketches are theoretically due at 8:00 on Wednesday morning. So, I mean, it would be like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Like, you know, we many times would go directly from the read through into, because the thing is, back in the day, again, pre-digital, Cheryl Hardwick, who was the very storied, famous musical director who was there at the beginning of my time at SNL, we would call her on the phone and leave a message with the, like, hi Cheryl, like, this is what we're doing for Bobby and Marty. We're going to start with, it was always just insane. It was like, you know, we're starting with Diana Ross, and then we're going to do, Baby Got Back. And then we're going to, like, whatever. It was just like an explosion of 5 a.m. thought. And then she would have to like write that medley and put it together by 2:00 in the afternoon so we could rehearse it before read through. It was madness. Yeah. So a lot of bags of Jolly Ranchers and a lot of just severe, profound procrastination. Like yeah.
Because you were also working on other sketches primarily, correct?
Yeah. You're playing. Yeah. It's a free fall. You know, everyone's kind of generating. And back then we all generated so much material. We would all write two sketches a week at least. So.
And how did HR get involved?
Oh my God. So that is not I can't believe she's going to make me tell. Just suffice it to say, there was some prank calling that happened at an inopportune time, because we're idiots and we're sitting in an office building. We're a bunch of sketch comedy dodos, and we would like we were procrastinating. We weren't doing anything. So we would like beep, 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 and then do like dirty things. But we're in an office building, and all they have to do is hit star and it shows what extension it is. But if we're like so unprofessional, we're just like, you know, armpit farting up there on the 17th floor, and Shoemaker comes in at like at 8:30 in the morning after we've been up all night. And, you know, we're like, oh, Mike, listen to this funny thing that Bobby and Marty said. You know, we finally start writing it. And he's like, were you guys calling people? Because the security met me. HR's here. We had to call and apologize to this poor woman who worked in like personnel at NBC. Like nothing. We had to apologize, and then we had to give her tickets.
Oh my God. Well, that's not too bad. Considering nowadays you'd be fired.
We'd probably be fired. Yeah. we would.
So you get you get these iconic characters.
Shoemaker had to. Yeah,
and it's totally worth it. Like this is the end result of these nights and these phone calls was things like Bobby and Marty and Delicious Dish and Topless Martha Stewart. When was the first time you heard Martha Stewart after that?
Oh, good question. She moved pretty quickly, actually. She's such a good brander, and she understands, meaning she's so intuitively business oriented that she quickly understood that the parody was a form of flattery. Actually, both Celine Dion and Martha Stewart saw it as a compliment that hopefully it was intended as, And so Martha had me come do this. If you want to like get high and entertain yourself for a truly insane experience, Martha Stewart had me come on the Martha Stewart Christmas special, which was a live network Christmas.
Like, wasn't Dennis Franz on it?
It wasn't live. It was an hour long. It was insane. And again, like she was at peak parodyable Martha. Like she would still say like herbaceous and this was very pre Snoop Dogg cool. Like she was, everything was 7,000 steps. Everything was perfect. Everything was artisanal, Arcana hens or whatever, whatever they're called, like robin's egg blue. Remember she had those special chickens that would make blue eggs. So they had me go out there as her and stand next to her as her and like help her make a strudel or something. It was insane. And again, I am a believer, impressions are short and sweet. Like you don't need, they get tired fast. So you got to I auditioned. I did a Martha Stewart impression in my audition, and I did 5 lines out. That was it. So
wow,
hilarious.
And you mentioned you've done a TikTok about it, and also you mentioned on Seth Meyers about Deandra Wells. That like sometimes you love characters. Sometimes they like for especially people that are on a show like that, you love a character that maybe doesn't pop as much.
Yeah, I had quite a few of those that were really, really fun. I mean, Deandra Wells was delightful, super unself-aware, super diva, unbelievably talks about love constantly, loves her audience, and just an unbelievable bitch to her band. Really passive aggressive. So we had the best time, and we would write these drippy songs. I think we aired I think we did like 3 or 4 of them, maybe at most. And then there was another one named Sarah Blazin, who I loved, who was an old Broadway dame, who they would wheel in like if Leslie Uggams was hit by a bus. And it always started with bad news, everybody. Leslie Uggams was hit by a bus. Great news. We've got Sarah Blazin. And she would refuse to learn the choreography because she had a pin in her hip. So she would just park it and and you know what? One of my greatest regrets of all time, and we would write terrible songs, from her Broadway shows and stuff. And she was always like, she would bitch and be very difficult and then quit at the end. She'd be like, you know what? I quit. And she would always say, I got a pin in my hip. One of my greatest regrets is that we wrote one for what ended up being my last episode, but I didn't tell anyone it was going to be my last episode, which was a mistake because then, of course, like none of your stuff airs. Right. And it was with Winona Ryder, and Paula Pell would write it with me, and she was just she's such a funny writer, especially that kind of character is just like, so it was my very last show with Winona Ryder. It got cut at dress. Very sad.
Which I think a lot of people
the world shall never see it.
The dress rehearsal situation where there are countless sketches that never make it. Yeah,
tons. And in our era, it wasn't just dress, it was live too, because we had such a prolific bunch of writer performers and people like, Tina was head writer for a lot of it. Adam McKay was head writer. I mean, really talented staff, obviously, writing staff. And so there was just an explosion of material every week. So even if your sketch made it to air, very often, the timing is always a little tricky because once you have a live audience, we spread. At the end there, we would lose 1 or 2 sketches during the live show
Wow.
A week. Yeah. Which is always leads to my favorite kind of crystallized memory of all SNLs in general, which is like somebody, dressed as a polar bear and crying. Like there's always like somebody's like
Right. And so how did you learn, like, because that has to take some thick skin to just on a weekly basis face that kind of chopping block.
It's hard. That's why the show is notorious, infamous. I don't know. I mean, it's challenging. People have a hard time. You have so much on the line creatively. Plus, you're exhausted. You're truly exhausted. I mean, you go to work. I can't tell you. And anytime I've gone back, it's not like it gets any different. Every time you're like, well, now that I'm an evolved human being, I'll start on Monday and I'll get some sleep. It just Monday. And then by Sunday, you have a full voicemail box or whatever, 5,000 unanswered emails, it's just consuming because it's nocturnal. It's last minute, it's all being created in the moment, all that. So it is what it is.
So Spivey, she sent a wonderful memory that kind of touches on something you've also mentioned. It was a brisk October evening, early in the SNL season.
Oh, no. I know exactly where this is going.
James Anderson and she were finishing up a sketch, and you were waiting patiently in her office next door to wrap it the fuck up and get in there to brainstorm ideas. James and I were racing to get it done, but Anna kept strutting over to our office to do comedy bits. Elaborate comedy
That's right.
bits. Our office doorway was her stage. Each bit was funnier than the last, followed by the three of us laughing for 10 solid minutes. We pleaded with her that her one-woman show was just making everything go longer. Anna is truly the funniest person in the world, but come on, let us finish. Finally, we were finishing our scene and about to turn it in when Anna appeared yet again. We braced ourselves. She posed demurely, then bent over, aimed her ass at us, and farted a football fart so major that it rattled an SNL contact list off the corkboard. James and I groaned, and Anna, feeling bad, hustled over to the 17th floor window, flung it open wide. It was this that she'd opened the door of a 737 mid-flight. The insane wind.
You understand? 17th floor. High rise. Like that window opens, it was like a tornado. Just every single thing in the entire room started blowing around. I mean, papers, everything.
She says a small spiral notebook filled with pitch ideas. Yeah. Copies of the sketch. And then luckily she had it on her computer, which was a bright orange iMac G3. And she
Those were the days.
She said that she was super lucky to have gotten to work with you for so many more shows and the sisterhood begin. She says, and so many more farts. I love you, Anna.
Oh my God. Ugh, it just goes to show you, do not do fart comedy.
But you got there, and you all, so many of them also referenced working together through 9/11 and how that really kind of just solidified everything that you got, like these relationships you all had. And Shoemaker even mentioned Shoemaker mentioned that they even mapped out like an emergency situation if anything else happened. And he taught you how to break into his home in Westchester?
Yeah, he was my emergency plan. That's exactly right. He was on my list. That's exactly right.
He told you which window was easy.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I mean, we lived down in Wall Street in the financial district, so I don't know why we picked his home in Westchester, but it seemed like a good plan.
Yeah.
At the time.
How did you come to decide to leave?
So I had my daughter Frances after my 6th season, her birthday's tomorrow. So June 24th, 2002. And I had done 6 seasons and I felt really good about my writing and my work there. And I had done my first Broadway job in the off season, in the summertime before my last season of SNL. I had worked in the Broadway production of Rocky Horror Show on Broadway. And I like I said, I started as a singer, but I just didn't have the confidence to enter that side of the business as so many music theater kids do, which is to go to open calls. And I just wasn't a confident enough dancer is really what it came down to. And so, and I'd kind of gone, sideways with this comedy thing. Obviously all my characters sing basically. But I'd kind of gotten, by being in New York, I'm a huge theater nerd. I had started to become more and more connected to the theater community. I'd become really close friends with Seth Rudetsky, who's kind of like the official ambassador to Broadway.
Honestly, and he's like the mayor.
He's the mayor, and he was a writer on the Rosie O'Donnell show down the hall. So they were in HE and we were in 8H. So we became friends in the NBC gym, and he was like, "You can really sing. You should really sing." And I loved to sing, but I had shyness about all of that. And so he had me do a bunch of Actors Fund, which is like the SAG Foundation, but for Actors Equity, concert performances. He does these big, like, all-star fundraisers with like all the heavy hitters of Broadway. We did like a recording of Hair, and I sang a song on that. And then he did this amazing production of Funny Girl with like 25 different Fannies, people, all these divas, like everyone from, Idina Menzel and, LaShawns, like all these incredible singers. So I ended up doing that. And then I was just like, I think I want to try this. Like, I think I've worked through what I needed to at SNL. Like, I think I've gotten what I needed out of it. And it's time to sort of, the other thing that I often say, and forgive me, this is so verbose, but everything at SNL, as we've just discussed, is about pulling it off. It's all about like just getting in under the wire, getting the sketch on, getting it written, getting it done, figuring it out. It's all adrenal, and it's all like the best that you do is to get it, just get through it.
Pressure every week.
Right. And I wanted the opportunity, especially I love character work, to refine something. I wanted the feeling of like being really in tune to the acting piece of it. And so theater does that. You do it 8 times a week. You constantly are improving upon what it is. You're constantly sort of working with the text or whatever it is. So I did a bunch of plays in a row. And then I auditioned for Wicked, and then I did Wicked in Chicago, and then I did it on Broadway. Then I did the Three Penny Opera on Broadway. Then I did a bunch of things in a row. And so that muscle was sort of, corrected. That instinct to pull it off was sort of became OCD on the other side. You could sort of have one or the other extreme. And so then at that point, I think I had just done I'd done a Sondheim show when I was pregnant with Ulysses, my son. So it was about a 6-year period where I just did theater pretty much. Yeah. And it was incredible. I learned so much about myself as a performer and the discipline. I loved the like routine and the discipline after the chaos of SNL. Also, once again, to bring gender into it, the opportunities were just really different in film and TV at that point for women. So especially, there were a lot of wives, I auditioned for Adam Carolla's wife, that kind of thing, a lot. God help me. Can you imagine? And there were other parts. I'm not saying there weren't, obviously, like Friends was huge, but
right. But like at that point, you had to go and really find, because you were also doing looking at your stuff, like right after you left, you did a lot of also independent films or like smaller film roles.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of them, one of my favorite films, Dare.
It's a great film. It's beautiful.
I reached out to Adam Salke, your director.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Because he and because he did like Dare, like a little mini follow-up with the original cast.
Yeah.
So I reached out to him because that was also, I feel like it was one of your first like real dramatic roles.
Yeah, it was very dramatic. Yeah.
So he said, Anna is a brilliant performer known for comedy, so naturally I cast her in a dramatic role as a suburban mom and therapist who is worried about her teenage son's happiness. This was so long ago, she is well within her right to say, who is this person? But while she's
still in my book.
Yeah, I will just say she delivers a subtle, thoughtful, and sensitive performance that radiates warmth to the film. In short, she nailed it. It was my first feature, and I will always remember her grace, collaborative spirit, and for going easy on me. Yeah.
That is so nice. Yeah. I'm going to cry. I don't like crying because I'm fundamentally a comedian.
I believe that you filmed that here in Pennsylvania, correct? Like right outside of
In
Philadelphia.
Philly. Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, the high school, 2 blocks from where I'm sitting right now.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. I mean, I had a newborn, so I was totally out of it, as you are.
Right.
But yeah, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful script. And I remember being so excited that I got to play something dramatic and grounded and real, because, that's not what you usually get to do.
Especially fresh out of the SNL gate, like.
Right. I mean, Elphaba is arguably, a lot of theater is arguably very dramatic, but I played parts that sort of went more. I mean, Fosca and Sondheim's Passion is like the most dramatic ever.
Jeez.
But yeah, but I mean, yeah. So it was a good opportunity, and it's funny because I did a little part at that point. Around that part, I started working. I did this judge character on The Good Wife a bunch of times, and I remember because Christine Baranski and I would be sitting there, and it's such a masterclass. Julia Margulies is such a masterclass. She does more with nothing happening than like her face.
That whole crew.
I know they're all Josh Charles, like those actors, unreal. But I remember Christine because like I would try to be so dramatic, but you just can't help yourself. Like you're so used to landing stuff. So I would say my the whatever, like next up on the docket, blah, blah, blah. And then no matter what, I'd be like, just some big comedy button, just like, and they'd be like, don't do that with your face, like as they come towards me. So what I've kind of, and maybe I will regret saying this in this particular venue, but I do have to say, I mean, I love playing a, relatively straight character like a Catherine Hastings that I did on American Auto, where she can be part of an ensemble and react to things and have goofy moments, but also be sort of drive the comedy in a very verbal way. But man, I think my drama yayas are out. Like, I think I officially, all comedians like go through this phase where they want to be taken seriously, dramatically. And I'm like, you know what?
Right.
Let somebody else do that. Somebody else is much better at it than I am.
But the thing is, like, you're already such a multi-hyphenate. You don't even need to add that. The writing, the comedy, the theater. You even did the musical version of The First Wives Club.
Oh my God, I did. I've done a lot of workshops.
That needs to happen. That show.
I can't believe that you know that. How did you find that out?
I think, Shoemaker mentioned, because Mike Shoemaker.
So funny.
If anyone has only jumped on board for her amazing work in American Auto, Mike Shoemaker says, I hope you educate them about her stage work. My wife and I flew to Chicago to see her in Wicked. She was Elphaba and she brought down the house. And then seeing her do it on Broadway was a personal thrill for me. It's crazy that she can play an auto executive with her trademark understated precision and also a flying green witch singing to the back row. Yes. And then he said, I'm so glad we're still friends and have furious text sessions. Give her a hug for me.
We do.
Yeah. So you have done a ton of musical stuff, and you still live in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you did start again, kind of like, that's where I feel like in the last, maybe decade, it has just been job after job after job, like Suburgatory, People of the Earth, which, I mean, thank God for streaming that people can go back and find these shows now, because that was phenomenal. That
was a really, really good show. And again, another show that falls, and to my point, like, I don't always have to be wearing like, a giant wig and comedy glasses, but although I'd love to, but People of Earth was a really smart show that kind of ran, I would say, more in the dramedy department. Like it had kind of an irony to it and a quiet comedy to it, but it was pretty understated, for sure. And I mean, Suburgatory was super fun because it was just a big fat character and delightful. No, I did. I mean, I honestly I believe in setting intentions. It's corny, and you don't always get what you ask for, but I'd done a lot of theater. I had done Saturday Night Live, and I love half-hour comedy. I really love it. It's a fast-paced show, like in the film world, it's fast, and it's, whatever, 6-7 pages a day. And it's collaborative, and it's accessible, and it's meaningful to lots of people that, can't afford to pay $200 to come see you sing. And I love it. I love television. I really love television. I love television comedy a lot.
What kind of advice would you give somebody who enters the game like you did with such a diversified portfolio? You could do the comedy, you could go the musical route, you could do theater, like what would you suggest to somebody who's coming maybe out of like a theater school?
It's so unscientific, right? Because actors are all, it's not like going to med school and then doing your internship and residency. Everybody has a different way they got there. And certainly this generation does. I mean, you've got TikTok and you've got, every other Instagram and everything else in the world. It's really old lady advice. It's like, it's keeping, it's being on time and being kind and giving people the benefit of the doubt and admitting when you don't know something like that. It's embarrassing. Everyone wants to be like, I'm terrible about that, but like learning to say like my daughter had a part on American Auto and she was, hemming and hawing because she was worried that everybody would call her a Nepo baby and this, that, and the other thing. Which I was like, they probably will. I was like, but guess what? It's like a safe environment for you to ask as many questions as you possibly can, because the next job that you get is going to be on a film set and there's going to be somebody in a hurry and they don't have time to describe like anything to you and they don't care. So feel free to ask. And she did. She would just ask, like, Renee, our prop person, would be like, after the lineup, we're going to come get. And she's like, I don't know what a lineup is. Just ask the questions because it takes practice. I mean, I've been doing it 25 years and I still miss my mark. All the time, you have to like, it just takes practice. You just have to learn tips, you learn, oh, well, I'm going to stop my body in space by this plant. I don't have to look at the floor, whatever, so that's not what your question was, but I gave you a good answer. Let's see what your question was. What advice do you give to somebody who has a lot of things? I mean, I think that you need to follow the opportunities that are making themselves apparent to you. I think that's a big piece of it. And regroup and move in another direction if you need to. I mean, I think that's what successful actors do all the time. It's not just multi-hyphenates. It's, I just went to see a production. We were out in LA this year for American Auto, and my friend Telly from Wicked was directing Rent at UC Irvine. So I went to go see Rent at UC Irvine because my son had never seen Rent on stage, and you're always just, you have to figure out things to do to work.
And because I'm imagining with the training and working on SNL, that trains you definitely for theater, like going back to the stage, because you're working with a live audience, you're working with set pieces that can fall down in a heartbeat. But when you did start working in like television, especially the single camera stuff, how difficult was that what was that learning curve like, getting used to more of almost realism?
It's not that hard. I mean, it's the hours are grueling, but I don't think it's that hard. I don't know. SNL prepared me for a lot of that. Suburgatory had many half-hour comedies have really long scripts. And, again, I think the SNL training helped my ear to recognize what the writer is going for often. I think, I do think as a performer, as much as I value what individuals can bring to things, like I think I tend to be a very writer-focused performer. I like to honor whatever I see as what they're writing for the joke. I don't feel the need to decorate it. People always ask at American Auto, how much do you improvise? And as an improviser, sure, there are times that I improvise. But Justin Spitzer's a fantastic writer. Like I worked harder for him, knowing that we were going in long and that these were like 22-minute episodes, and she was a fast talking character. I tried to get out the exact amount of information I possibly could, because they were usually written with a ton of plot, and my decorative flair was not going to make that situation better necessarily, I mean, he uses a ton of improvised lines, which has been interesting, but I'm more interested in trying to sell their joke as they wrote it.
Interesting. Because that's part of that collaborative spirit that you worked with, with the writing, background of knowing that, like, you don't want to get too married to your writing, but it's there for a reason.
Yeah, they worked really hard at it. I mean, I know that, and I'm not saying that sometimes it's bad writing and sometimes it's annoying and sometimes there aren't things. And, but again, it's like a little bit of a 25 years in, you do sort of, and especially coming as a woman through the 90s and 2000s, the number of times I have heard from my agent, it's not on the page, but they know, they just can't wait to see what you can do with it and what kind of magic you can bring to it. So I think a lot of performers feel that's an opportunity. I started to feel like, well, you need to write roles.
Right.
I'm not saying they have to be perfect, but like that's on you. You're the writer.
Exactly.
That shouldn't be on me.
Right.
I can deliver whatever you want. I can make that happen for you. But
and now you've brought it up a couple times.
I'm making a face because I've now said like 5,000 things, and I'm like, don't say that. And the
coming up in the 90s and the 2000s, and as a woman, it is. I mean, it's unavoidable conversation now. What kind of advice or urging would you give young actresses? Because I'm sure in the last 25 years you have worked on sets or in situations that were not.
My God, somebody yesterday just said, like, they asked me something about, like, so when the intimacy coordinator, I was like, intimacy coordinator? Like my first SNL, I was on a treadmill. It was a commercial for like, it was the first thing I did, like after arriving. It was a commercial for somebody's like bubble bath, something. I don't even remember what the joke was. Tracy Morgan was like a Jamaican bubble bath brand. And I was on a treadmill. I don't remember why I was running, but they had us running like they were going to green screen it or something. And I had on a G-string and a tiny bra, which they were covering with bubbles.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, what have I signed up for? And just being like,
it's spoofed on shows about live comedy sketch shows.
Literally. Yeah. I was just, yes. You know what show spoofs it so alarmingly well? I was just rewatching The Comeback.
Oh my God.
My young actresses want to see, I mean, it's almost literal the way that those half-hour sets felt back in the 90s. Those multicam sets.
So
a lot of them.
You've been there. You've been in you've been in those sets where the writers' rooms are not comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
right
now? Like your daughter's getting into this world. So
yeah. I mean, I think they're balancing it really well. Actually, I think that they're aware. They're way more aware of what their rights are and what their the care that they give to one another, particularly to underrepresented, cast members. I think that there's much more attention paid to that than there was. I think it will continue to diversify as hopefully we evolve and it becomes the new norm. And I think that, I guess, I don't know what I would say exactly, because I do think the times have evolved so that there are systems in place that are better protections. I guess I would say that young actresses still have the right, should still remind themselves that they have authority to advocate for themselves without reprisal. Because I think that there's one thing to have your like harassment stuff in place, and there's another entirely to just feel like you're being kind of disregarded because you're young and you don't know anything. And I've seen young actresses, especially by, maybe directors from a different generation, be kind of not taken seriously in a way where they've deserved to be taken seriously. I guess what I would say is, I was 20 years older than like Harriet Dyer on American Auto, who is such a very mature and articulate and wonderful person and performer. And there were definitely, times that I would forget that that she might feel overwhelmed or that this is a lot to juggle. And so I just take the responsibility seriously as not like a mentor, but I just felt that it was important to set an example on my set for, a kind and comfortable environment for people. So, trying to make them feel safe and happy.
And that was because when you're number one on the call sheet, that really that's a responsibility, not just to like deliver.
It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And how was that, like, taking on, it almost felt like, and it was such a great role. And, we can shake our fists at the sky because, it didn't end the way it should. But getting a role like that, especially after the amount of time you've put in and the different characters you've played, to get that in and have that much fun with it, but like you said, she was a straight woman, but she was driving all of the, all the comedy came out of what she did. Yes.
And how it did. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Obviously an incredible role, an incredibly fun role, a role that gets to drive information, uses skills that I like, which is to undersell, as Mike was saying, and to keep things focused and determined. I love that about a lot of roles I play, and I like words, and I like wordy characters. Even though they're a bitch to learn, but it's satisfying, Lady Dynamite, that agent that I played, Karen Grisham, they would be like 3 pages of just blocks of lines, but it was so fun and that effect. But the number one thing I think is just, I took it really seriously. I felt like I had to set a good example. I felt like I had to show up, ready and on time. And like I said, and treat your crew well and understand, kind of shelve my own frustrations about things at times and advocate for my cast when there were things that went south. I felt like I had to let, whatever authorities in charge know, hey, we got to deal with this situation or that situation, or, and then just the little things like giving a nice present for rap. Those things are important,
right? Like you said, and I know Tina Fey is the same way about creating the space, because these people are giving you 16 hours a day out of their life, 5 days a week, you want to make a place where they're happy to be.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. They're long days. It's hard work. And it's an unbelievable privilege. I think doing all of that theater and, riding the F train with my Tupperware of salad for all of those years to rehearsal rooms on 42nd Street. It will never be lost on me, the care that they give you on a television set. You've got professionals wiring your mic. James Dunham, who's the hairdresser who did Catherine's hair. There's not a hair out of place, and it's very integral to the character because she wants to be perceived of as in control and rich and powerful, even if she's a mess inside and everything's happening. So he touches my head between every take, and it's because when you watch the show, the hair is incredible. It's incredible. So I guess it's just, I like putting on a show. I like the magic of TV. I like the hustle. I love the resources. I like that I feel like the number one has to set that tone. And so there are days when your feet hurt and, whatever, you got some bad news, and it's incumbent upon you to keep it together. It's kind of like being I imagine like a principal, or, it was oddly enough like being a CEO, which is what Catherine is.
Which most CEOs could take a lesson from. Then on top of all that, and how did COVID change your process? Because you guys produce a lot of that in COVID, and that is how the dynamic can form with the cast.
Yeah, it was great, frankly, because as many of the people watching this will remember, if you worked at all during the pandemic, you, at the very beginning, when we shot the pilot before the vaccinations had come out, you got in your look, and then they were like, no touches, really? You had like a bin that you could fix yourself with? It was crazy. And then they would call action. You would take off your mask, you would put it in a little bin, you would do your scene, cut, put your mask on. So the only faces you ever saw in the process of making the pilot of American Auto were the other actors. I never saw Jeff Blitz's face. I never saw Justin's face, which was very weird because, when you're doing a pilot, it's the most tenuous and uncomfortable of all of the processes, and soup to nuts, because everyone is insecure. Everyone is double questioning what they're doing, or not entirely certain what they want, even if they know what they want. I mean, a director as good as Jeff, but they want to cover their bases. You want to have a lot of different takes for the edit. You want to make sure, the writing's being served. So it was very weird being directed in that role. I was new to the role, figuring it out. You see what's on the page, but you're like, who exactly is she? Is she married? Is she not? Is she smart? Is she dumb? I mean, we were like navigating real fundamental questions about each character, and the dynamic amongst the 7 of us. So very weird doing that. I had to do a lot of the actor self-talk. I'm not a charlatan. I've done this before, because I couldn't hear, there was no feedback. No, but you couldn't hear anyone laughing. You couldn't see anybody's face. So like we would finish the takes and I'd be like, I hope this is funny. I mean, you're just kind of like winging it. Yeah. Thank God the script was so tight, because, and also frankly, we did it in October of the pandemic. So I flew to LA. I did my first fitting with the Leaks, Hester. And then I met Justin for the first time, who came, hey, welcome aboard, da-da-da. And then we were shut down. Everything was shut down. So I was like, we're never going to make this pilot. That's not going to happen. And then when it finally did happen, it was this kind of weird, I felt like we were in like The Leftovers, or like one of those movies, because that book, because we were on this Toyota campus in Torrance and there was nobody there. It had been like abandoned. So, and they were like weird old, it was strange. And then I just kind of like went, home at night and then went back to this Toyota campus, and there was nobody around because of the pandemic, Wow. So it was a very interesting experience. And I think it made, I love that cast. I think that it is, first of all, just well cast, but second of all, uniquely kind of, that's one of the massive frustrations about the show being canceled, is it is so hard to create alchemy amongst 7 people. And it's such an unknown, as every time. And just a crapshoot. And the fact that I don't know if it was that everything was so perfectly cast, or, chicken and egg wise, if it was because we endured that kind of strange experience of shooting it together during the pandemic. I don't know, but there was a real sense of it being a workplace of a bunch of kind of ill-fitting people together in one space together, that made it really fun to play with.
Did you talk to Amy or Tina about the alchemy that it takes to get the right ensemble? Because they've both been in those situations with Parks and 30 Rock.
I didn't talk to them about that because I wasn't the creator, but that was sort of Justin's department. Like I arrived and everybody had been cast already. I mean, it all happened outside of my purview. I did talk to them about the responsibilities about being number 1. I did talk to them about leadership, some of that stuff. I've done a lot of producing on my own. Like I wrote my own album, I do my own Christmas show with my band. And so and then I wrote the Clusterfunk movie with the Hallmark Christmas parody with Dratch. So, and we wrote and produced that movie. So I have had leadership experience. And frankly, like when you come up through sketch, you're kind of like these kids doing TikTok. You're kind of de facto producing all the time because you're making something happen and bringing it to life. But so I understood a little bit about the leadership onus, but it's a delicate, Justin is the executive producer. I'm number 1 on a call sheet. Like that's a different dynamic. And so I wanted to take that responsibility as seriously as I could. And treat him and the writers with respect, and make sure my cast was happy as well,
And so you mentioned the albums. And this was the thing. Did it take doing the theater and getting to a point where you were like, had the confidence to go into a recording studio?
For sure. Again, totally blind, terrifying undertaking. What happens when you work, when you sing roles as big as Elphaba, because they're kind of, I was the 4th Elphaba cast. So there was Stephanie J. Block did the national tour, Adina, Eden on Broadway. Shoshana. Yeah. So it went Adina, Shoshana, Eden, and then Stephanie was on tour, and then they set up the Chicago company, and then I did that one. So there was still a fair amount of hubbub and foofara around the Elphabas. And, it was like the second year of the show. So it was still a hot ticket. And when that happens, you get asked and approached by people to sing places, like all kind of places at the, at Gracie Mansion in New York, to like the gay cruises, to I've done a lot of gay cruises, performed, and whatever. Like, so you end up having, and they're fun opportunities and they're interesting. And, I kind of stumbled along where I would like do some of them, but then it would be like me and a piano. And honestly, like 90% of the people who are there don't know that I've sung on Broadway. So they're like, why is she singing? And there's really nothing worse to do to an audience than not do comedy and sing instead. Like, it's just a real raging disappointment to those who are in the audience. So I kind of stumbled through it and like figured out, I was like, okay, I got to tell jokes. I've got to figure out like the one woman show factor here. I've got to tell funny stories. I've got to, I'm not going to, I never did like the character tree or anything like that. But that, by the way, a caricature tree, and I should explain what that is. It's a hat tree with like different comedy character hats on it. In my mind, that's what the character tree is. And wigs. There's like beards and wigs. Yeah. So and glasses. But so I did that, and then ultimately, as I was saying about the theater thing, which I do love, it can just be very buttoned up, that, and can be kind of too much so that way. So I eventually sort of just fell into jazz because it really was the happiest for a number of reasons. First of all, because it is improvisational in nature. It is very text driven in a lot of the standards, that the lyrics are great stories, and, especially from the, 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, some of the favorite American jazz standards are just great lyrically. Johnny Mercer and all those amazing composers. And it's silly and it's fun and it's brassy. And there's this kind of throwback thing where there was this little moment in American sort of entertainment history where it's kind of like the supper club era. Like, you were basically expected to, if you could sing, land a joke as well, and stand in front of a band and do it happily. So that's how that all came to be. And then I always wanted to do a Christmas record. I love the holidays. Something about my career seems to happen a lot around the holidays. Like, I never, all my like beloved Sweaty Balls and Martha Stewart's Topless Christmas. And like, there's a lot of like sketches that fall around then. And then I know. And then my album, I literally was in the shower and I started singing the song that I wrote, Sugar and Booze, which was the title track. So I ran out and recorded it into my phone and then fixed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, then you do Clusterfunk Christmas.
And then Clusterfunk, because my friend Danielle von Zernick, total social friend, but her creative, her day job was basically to produce these Lifetime Christmas movies and Hallmark Christmas movies. She's produced a ton of them. And so I don't know. We were just drinking.
Actor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what she was on?
She was on General Hospital.
She was Lou on General Hospital, and now she produces movies.
That's amazing.
And she was on a streak there where she would do like 3 a year of like Lifetime and Hallmark, like churn them out. Yeah. And Hallmark, as most people know, has this like insane unwritten Bible of rules. Like, it's loosening up as they're changing, but there are so many rules and things.
There always have to be lights in the shot.
Always at Christmas in every frame.
Yep.
Christmas in every frame. Plaid band, can't wear plaid. The guys don't wear plaid. There's like all these random, the gazebo. There's all these things, like these like inside baseball things about it. And I was like, I said to Danielle, I was like, I want to do a Christmas movie with you. I want to do the perfect parody. That's my idea of like, I want it so spot on that the most passionate Hallmark, like ironic Hallmark devotee, because they have this huge audience between basically ladies and gays of like people who love and hate watch or passionate. I mean, they're very comforting because they're
comforting.
Christmas cookies. Yeah, you know where they're going to go. So we had the best time because she came back. She's like, I think we could sell this, and we were so worried. We were like, someone's going to get this idea, do it. And so I brought in Dratch because she's a delight.
Yeah.
And that's how we wrote Clusterfunk,
Ugh.
a Clusterfunk Christmas. We wanted to have every single trope you could have in a single Christmas movie in one movie.
Will there be a sequel?
We've written it. It's sitting on a desk at Viacom.
Okay.
And hopefully after the writer's strike, we'll get to do it. Yeah, it's really fantastic, in my opinion. The Clusterfunk sisters, we play these maiden old aunts because in the Hallmark world, you're either a breeder or you're like an old prune. Exactly. You're like one or the other. Like you have sage wisdom or you can reproduce. So we go to an international strudel contest and inexplicably find love with the royals.
Of course.
It's called a Royal Clusterfunk. Yeah.
Love it.
So hopefully we'll get to make it because I don't think I've laughed so hard, probably since Wine Country, but we just laughed.
That's what I wanted.
It's also, by the way, as shameless as it gets, like Clusterfunk falls into the like true goofball joy.
Well, that's right. You have developed these relationships and you've all gotten these careers, and the work that you've done have allowed you the space to do something like Clusterfunk or Wine Country, which was like, to those that was like the Avengers, like bringing together all of you guys for that film.
So much fun.
And that had to be, I don't even understand how it actually ended up getting made because I couldn't imagine the number.
It's only because Amy Poehler is a Virgo, and she was the director. I mean, I don't know if like they told you this, but we would make so much noise because we're just everybody just like get and then there's little Virgo Amy over here trying to like shut everyone up. And I remember at one point Paula was like, I feel like we're like parrots and somebody needs to put a blanket over our cage like before every take. And it got to be like a shorthand thing where Amy would just be like, blanket.
Oh, okay.
Because we were like, tip, 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 you know, singing and talking. And baby, oh my God, guys, blanket.
Yeah. That was the amount of the comedic power of that cast. Will there be work together again? Can that happen?
Oh God, I hope so. I really hope so.
That was based on your like birthday traditions, right?
Yeah. So when one of the girls turns generally a big milestone birthday, we would take a trip. We still owe, because of COVID, a bunch of them. We're like there's a backlog, right. But we went it started with Dratch. We went for her birthday to Napa. It was actually Sonoma, and ate and drank, so much. It was ridiculous. And, took over these tiny little towns, and took over a house and just had an incredible like ladies getaway. And then when I had my big birthday, we went to Palm Springs. My request was that we wear muumuus and bathing caps and sit by the pool, which we did. I got everybody super old-timey bathing caps, and we all brought muumuus, and they all get named. What that one was called, like I can't remember what it was called, something muumuu. And then, yeah, anyway, it was great. So after that, Amy, I think, was just like, this has got to be a movie. So Spivey and Liz Kukowski wrote it. But the fantasy for me, and again, everybody's different, but the fantasy for me, again, I think I still have like 90s boy comedy FOMO a little bit with those big giant movies that they all got to go do whatever they wanted in. Right. I think the fantasy for me would be something in like the Christopher Guest world where we all just play giant characters in a big fat comedy.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Wine Country had a beauty to it and sort of a sweetness in a way. Even though it was a comedy, obviously, it had there was a sweet, Amy's a very thoughtful director. Yeah. And I think I would want I would want to do more movies like that, but I would also want to do more movies that were just, that would bring the hat tree.
Right. Exactly. You want to, diversify the portfolio. Now,
why not?
So how do you now, you kind of have a clean slate right now. How do you pick a project?
I do it in several ways. First of all, a broken record, is it well written? Does it make me laugh? Is it smart? Whatever that is to each person, but it resonates for me. And I'm not proud of this, but as much as I do a lot of characters, I have always found that I either see the character as soon as I read it or I don't. It's a very clean, like back to my thing of like the agent saying, you can bring something to it. If I don't get like what they're doing, I don't really want to do it. I don't want to like, I'm not that actor who like wants to discover it. You know, I want to know with certainty who I'm doing. And that can be all kinds of things. I mean, I originated the role that's actually now the musical Kimberly Akimbo. I did the play on off Broadway at Manhattan Theater Club. It's like one of my great actors things. It's I'm in the Samuel French.
That's nice.
like I know, I'm very proud of that. But again, like she's like a shifty, unhoused, like scam artist aunt. And I don't know, I understood who she was. Like there was, just the way David's such a good writer, David Lindsay Abaire. Like I think sometimes it's that, sometimes it's Catherine, Sheila Shea, like whatever. You read it, I know who the person is, I know how to play it. Honestly, I ask around if people are nice. I don't want to work with jerks. I have 2 kids. I've missed a lot of their lives in this sort of crazy vagrant career that people don't prepare you for, how much you're going to be, how itinerant it is, how much time you spend on the road, how much time you spend away from your family, how many bar mitzvahs and weddings and all of it that you miss. The one thing I know with great certainty is I don't want to be on a set that I resent because someone is behaving badly. And it doesn't mean that like everyone has to be best friends or anything like that. Just don't be a jerk. Don't be moody. Don't be mean to people. Don't speak sharply. You know, if you have an issue, be direct, talk about it. That's fine. People have issues. But I was just reading today on somebody's Instagram. They were like, directness it's one of the greatest acts of kindness that you can ask for your needs to be met and then move on, you know? Yeah. So I know that sounds corny, but I just think life is it's a hard job. 14 hours is a long day, no matter how happy it is. So, and you have a lot to do. You have people touching you. You have somebody fixing your clothes, fixing your face, fixing your hair, wiring you, you're running lines, you're getting notes, your script supervisors giving you a correction. It's hot, all of those things. And I don't say it as a complaint. I just say it as like the one thing I don't have like space for is like meanness or pettiness,
No, I get it. That's awesome. Well, listen, I need to wrap you. This has been such a delight. And the cool thing is like, we can do this again in a bunch more years to do another career retrospective because, we didn't even get to talk about like the Christmas Story Live, Grease Live, like all of those.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I know I feel really bad that we didn't do that. And Lady Dynamite.
Lady Dynamite. And who knows what's
Lady Dynamite.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the live musicals are amazing. We'll cover them really quickly. Yeah. They're like the greatest combination. They're like SNL is what they are. They're interesting because they're super rehearsed and that like energy of the live experience of knowing it's happening, of everybody watching something at the same time is amazing.
Right. Like it's so weird, like how far we've gotten with television and content and streaming and all that. But like one of the high points of the last like decade really is these weird live musical productions that like feels like something would have happened in the 50s.
I know, but it's also like it's back to like why movies like Mean Girls everybody loves high school and everybody did musicals in high school. And I think there's something that feels really resonant of that when you're watching one live. You're feeling like you're in on something, and on something like Grease is the #1 produced musical across the country. Why? Easily. Because there are enough parts for girls and boys.
You can literally cast your entire high school as
that's right.
That's right.
It's not because it's the greatest musical ever written, but there's some really good parts. So everybody's like invested,
It's why every Catholic girls' school did Sound of Music. You need
exactly right.
65 nuns.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And then Lady.
That had to be like a dream come true for you because that's the combination of everything you've worked on.
Everything. Yeah. So much fun. I mean, beyond. And just ridiculous, and I'm proud of them. And yeah, great. And then but the thing I wanted to say about Lady Dynamite, she was another fast talking. That's a role that I saw on the page. I was like, yes, I want to do that lady. I know exactly who that lady is. And I've never met her, but I don't know, I knew it.
And again, roles are getting more interesting.
Yeah. I am excited for the next, I mean, God willing, this strike will resolve and really celebrate original voices. That's my one fear about these sort of catastrophic moments in entertainment, in the business, because I do worry that if it's so corporate and it's so about the bottom line all the time. I mean, I'm really sad that American Auto was canceled because it was an original show. It had original thought. It had original characters. I haven't seen anything like it before. And I do worry that we kind of, the people who are making things go to sort of the comfort food model more than they need to, because we're overcorrecting from this streaming explosion of original voices. But what I'm hoping is that once the dust settles, you know, as the sort of a net effect of having empowered a lot more people to write and tell their unique stories, diversifying casts and diversifying creators, that we do make more room for original voices, because those are where these incredible unicorn shows come from, you know?
Yeah. Well, I am so excited. I'm so grateful to have gotten to spend this time with you and talking with you. And thank you to everyone at SAG-AFTRA. This was awesome. On behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you, Anna, for sharing your experiences, your craft, your process with your fellow performers. Thank you so much.